Hey everybody, this is Yann Yu from Lucidworks. I'm here at Lucene Solr Revolution with over 500 attendees here to talk about Lucene and Solr and everything going on there. Right now I'm here with Alexandre Rafalovitch, a user of Solr for quite a few years now. You've been a member of the community. You consider yourself kind of a Solr popularizer, is that right, Alex?
Right, that's where I look at this, yeah.
And so what exactly do you consider a Solr popularizer?
Well, if you look at science communities like a physics community or a chemistry community, there are people who do things like nuclear physics, and then there are people who explain what nuclear physics is to the beginners in schools and in high schools at university level, so they understand what it is about and whether they want to get into that field and what they need to look at. So I feel that's kind of my role in the Solr community, to talk to the beginners and explain a complex product like Solr in more easy terms and give them easy onboarding experience.
Right, it's true. I mean, when you've been a member of a community for a long time, you can kind of get used to the way that things work in that community. You can forget that there are lots of people who, when they first come in, become really overwhelmed by everything, all the resources, all the different people, all the complexity of the product, right?
Right, exactly. And the product can be very easy, but it's not necessarily set up that way right from the beginning. Right. So it takes someone to show how to make it easy. And then it's very easy to follow and grow into the full Solr capacity.
Okay. So what have you been doing as a Solr popularizer? What are some of the things that you've been doing to kind of help out the community and outreach to other people?
Right, so one of the first things I did was I wrote a book which specifically targets the beginners and takes them from sort of zero understanding of what search is and specifically what Solr is, and takes them through the easy example and gets them fairly quickly, in only 3 or 4 days, to the point where they can index their content, they can index even multilingual content, they can set up their request endpoints and defaults and do the proper search and understand the implication of all these things. And at the end of that, even though it's a fairly short time, they can then go out to the community and then they can read the documentation, they know how to ask questions on the mailing list, and so that puts them in a position to become much faster and become more intermediate. More intermediate level users very fast.
Right, and it's important again, I mean, with all these new users, it can be tough to find the exact kind of stuff that you need to figure out your product. And so it's good that we have a lot of different resources for people to reach out to, including yourself, that can make that easier for you. You also mentioned that you kind of have a website that has kind of more advanced Java docs and stuff like that. Is that something you've been working on as well?
Right, yeah, so that was kind of the next step. When I was writing the book, I was looking at a lot of resources that are available and trying to understand, as you write the book, you're trying to comprehend everything and then distill it down into the smaller set. And I realized that things like update request processors or analyzer chains like filters and tokenizers and so on. Yeah. There is a million of them, exactly. And there has been more and more, especially in Solr, like for 6 and for 7, people have been adding really useful one very rapidly. But the wiki was not being updated to include all of them. And I thought, well, a good contribution to Solr community would be a semi-automated way to discover what they are and then put them together in one location. So that's a couple of resources that the Solr Start website has.
Right, and you update that every single time there's a new release as well, with all the new tokenizers, all the new pieces and things like that.
I mean, the latest one is 4.10.1, I believe, so I haven't updated for 10.2 because there isn't much changes, but there is a version for 4.9 and 4.8 and 4.7 actually in the archives as well. Okay. So you can actually go and look what was back then. And it also links to the Java doc, and then that links to the source, so you have this sort of happy path from Googling for a particular analyzer that's not very well documented, hitting the page, reading the short description, deciding what you want, getting the full description, going to the source if you really need to get that advanced.
Right, and getting everything you need kind of in one place.
Right.
I mean, it's great. I mean, that's what I've always loved about the Solr community. There's so many people like yourself that are willing to just be like, hey, if I need to get this done, if I need this information, let's get this done and make it available for everybody.
Right, of course. I mean, I have benefited so much from the Solr community. I really appreciate it, and I felt it was my, as a developer, I really had to contribute something. And
your way to give back.
And that indeed, it is a way to give back.
So you also had a presentation here, I believe it's on Solr versus Elasticsearch, right?
Right.
How did that go? I mean,
it went really well. So we did overflow the room, and it went really well. I mean, of course, in half an hour, it's really hard to distill the differences, but I really try to sort of look at, even though Solr and Elasticsearch both based on Lucene, and a lot of the information is actually Lucene level information, it's presented very differently on the websites and in the community and the mailing list.
It's hard to get past the marketing sometimes too.
It's very hard to get past the marketing, and so I wanted to bring it together on the same plate and give a base for comparison. I didn't give a recommendation at the end, but hopefully I gave people an understanding what to do next if they're really interested. And a couple of people came up to me and said, that was great, including one of the Elasticsearch people. He said that was fair.
No, and that's important. I mean, we have to be fair in these discussions, otherwise we're just misleading people. So.
Right, of course. I mean, my focus is on Solr, so dealing with Elasticsearch was a way to understand it and explain it to Solr community. So for Elasticsearch person to say it was fair, to me was a greatest compliment to some degree.
Right. No, I mean, that's important. If you're going to give a talk that kind of supposed to show both viewpoints, it's great if people from both sides come up and say, you know what, I actually really enjoyed that and I learned something from that.
Right, exactly.
So, I mean, as far as that goes, the whole Solr versus ES thing, I mean, we're kind of frenemies in that, we've both kind of brought search to more and more people, but we do kind of compete at times. What do you think is kind of something that Solr should be doing? I mean, what are the kinds of things you're seeing in Solr that could be improved to make it more accessible, I guess?
Yeah, well, I think I have to answer that in two parts. I mean, what kind of the situation was as it was 3 months ago versus it is now. And I think
it's always a moving target.
It's always a moving target, and in this case it's moving in a really good direction, because 3 months ago I had a very strong opinion that Elasticsearch was winning because of that onboarding experience. It was making it very easy to download Elasticsearch, and there was you go straight into the tutorial kind of thing, and the documentation was good, and the experience was just a little easier. And Solr, being a bigger beast,
right?
It had so many features that a person would get quite confused in the beginning.
Right.
But in the last couple of months, there has been amazing progress, especially if you look Jira. Some of the things haven't landed yet.
So many.
But the start scripts, and there is a lot of thought about the new collections and so on. And I even listened to the podcast
with Steve Rowe and Tim Potter.
With Steve Rowe, the Solr Cluster podcast of October 24th, I believe. And I was like nearly skipping on the street as I was walking and listening. I was like, this, I can just point people at that and say, this is what's coming, and that's very important. So that's kind of makes me very excited to be in the Solr community and see those initial steps of the beginning users to be beginning to be addressed and in earnest.
And I mean, from our point of view, I mean, kind of what we've done with a lot of the improvements in 4.6, 4.7, and 4.8, those have been really around making Solr Cloud durable and scalable. But we realized that simply making it better in that way isn't all we need to do. So we took a step back and said, where are we really failing kind of people right now? And what we were failing are these new developers that are coming up, and they look at Solr and they get confused by it. It's a little difficult.
Yeah.
So.
And it's not that difficult to get to the point where they're not
confused. Elastic is so easy.
The Elastic seems so easy, but of course with Elasticsearch, once you get to the intermediate level, either Solr or Elasticsearch, you have to know how things work. There is no way getting around it.
They look very similar at that level. I mean, you're doing a lot of the same things at that point,
right,
but people just don't realize that.
Yeah, because the documentation is very different, and because the approaches of presenting it are very different.
Are there any last things you're looking forward to at Solr Lucene Revolution? Any things that you've seen that have been amazing here?
Well, the community was amazing. This was my first time at the Revolution, and I got to meet most of the committers, and I got to meet a lot of other people who write really interesting blog articles on the web, and I read their stuff, and I was very impressed, and I just wanted to come and say hi and just tell them that, look, the stuff you're doing is really amazing. And that's what I was going to do. And then some people came to me and said, the stuff you're doing with the Solr Start website and Solr Start mailing list, they said that's amazing. So it's kind of validation both ways. I was really, really happy. Yeah.
I'm glad. What else have you been working on? I mean, apart from the Solr Start website, apart from your last book, apart from this talk, what are the kinds of things you're working on that we can start looking forward to, Alex?
Right, yeah. So there is a Solr Start website. There is a Solr Start mailing list. For the Solr popularizers specifically, we have a LinkedIn group where we try to get the senior members of Solr community to start discussing how to best present Solr to other people. And I have just signed a book contract with O'Reilly to address.
Awesome.
Yeah, actually, it's a breaking news. Breaking news, and it's also a different aspect and also important the same way. It's going to be called tentatively. We may change the name yet. Solr 5 Troubleshooting and Maintenance.
Okay.
So that's another aspect where a lot of people, after the first production rollout, they don't know what they're doing next. They can't quite figure out what happened,
Right.
and it helps them. It's going to help them with that, and it's also going to help these people who come in into existing Solr installation,
Right.
and they're going, well, it's running, it's fine. I need to improve it, but first I need to figure out what it is.
Right,
So that's kind of the
exactly.
maintenance part.
And so have you been pretty involved in Solr 5? Have you been following a lot of the stuff going
I'm
on there?
following a lot of Jiras. I'm not
Okay.
contributing any code.
Right.
But I'm sort of trying to figure out how to present these new features and new capabilities in Solr 5, but also latest Solrs that haven't been covered by other books. How to
Exactly.
present them to the new users, of course. Yeah.
And sometimes it feels like with Solr, you could have a book every year and you'd be totally fine. There's so many changes all the time.
Well,
going
in
on.
fact, you could have a book every year on a different topic.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. That's true.
Yes, it's a very fast-moving platform, and it's very exciting to be part of that community.
Thanks again, Alex, for coming in. Again, my name is Yann Yu. I'm here at Lucene Solr Revolution, and this has been Alexandre Rafalovitch here talking with us about Solr, Lucene, and everything else related. Thank you.
Thank you.